this meeting pursuant to ORS 192.660(e) to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. We will pick up with an executive session after this regular meeting of the City Commission concludes this evening. But we will start with our agenda with a roll call. Ms. Reed?
Yes. Commissioner Denise McGriff?
Present.
Commissioner Rocky Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell?
Here.
The Mayor, Dan Holliday, is absent this evening, and Commission President Rachel L. Smith.
Here. So we haven't been doing the flag salute, but I'm going to throw you all a curveball. I think we should do it. So item number 2 on the agenda is the flag salute. If we can, those of you that are in attendance, stand for the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You sound like a third grade choir.
That was rad.
It was the thought that counted.
Everybody was pausing and not sure, the public's not going to be sure if we know the pledge. That was fun. Okay, wanted to start off with a good note. So let's move on to item 3, which is ceremonies, proclamations, and presentations. This is mayoral appointment. Can we do this without the mayor present?
We cannot, so I'll request that we go ahead and skip that one tonight and we move on to 3B, please.
Sounds good. So item 3D, Oregon City Connector Shuttle update. I saw this presentation at CIC on Monday, so you're in for a good presentation. I'll turn it over to Mr. Lewis to make introductions.
Thank you, Commission President and Commissioners. Appreciate the time yet again for an item that's near and dear to Public Works' heart, which is transit in Oregon City. Tonight, I feel really fortunate to have Christina Babcock from Clackamas County present. She did do this for the CIC the other night, and she may have been able to shorten it up. I really sprung this on her. I had it on the agenda. I did everything appropriate. Katie had it all queued up, and I forgot to tell Christina about it somehow. So I called her about an hour ago, and she agreed to kind of pull it together real quick. So she's going to do this in short order and try to get through it. She's been with the county for about a year, and when I first met her, I felt really fortunate for Oregon City because she was going to be working pretty hard on our project as well as many House Bill 2017 transportation projects. So she comes to us she comes to the county as the Director of Operations at TriMet for many years, and she's just got a multitude of experience, and I've really enjoyed working with her. So, Christina, you want to take it away?
Sure. Let me share my screen here. Katie, it looks like I can't. It's supposed to disable me sharing the screen. Do you want to share it for me?
Can you go ahead and try it one more time?
On presentation.
All right. Somebody give me a thumbs up. All right, thank you. Get this into present mode. So, as Joan said, I did make a similar presentation the other night. I have shortened it up a bit, so there will be a few things that we breeze over. But I am Christina, Transit Coordinator for Clackamas County. Primarily, I'm working on transit-related projects within the county. The Oregon City Last Mile Shuttle is one of those projects. Additionally, the county is involved in 3 other Last Mile Shuttle planning and implementation projects, as well as some different projects with the other small transit providers. So tonight we'll talk about Oregon City. So this particular shuttle was identified long ago in many different plans. And those plans include the Clackamas County Transportation System Plan, the TriMet Southeast Service Enhancement Plan, TriMet had a couple improvement plans that they identified this need in. And so this idea has been floating out there for some time, and it's really about making connections that will enable people to travel to work, school, and other daily destinations within Oregon City and even outside of Oregon City on transit. The idea here is that it's going to fill gaps to underserved portions of Oregon City and use this shuttle to connect those underserved portions to Oregon City Transit Center, Parklets Community College, and employers, which allows the riders to get ultimately where they need to go. So in terms of the timeline, we have completed our public engagement and existing conditions series for this particular project, gone through a draft service plan, had a number of different jurisdictional meetings, and so now in October, we're working on the final service plan. And with the final service plan, there's some last minute adjustments that need to be made. We'll look to hire a contractor to operate the service, and then implementation hopefully in early 2021. So kind of overall what's in this plan? Well, this plan obviously summarizes all the previous needs that were identified. It talks about the service area demographics, key activity centers, commute shed information. It's going to have it has a full operations plan in it. What type of service are we going to run? Route options, stop considerations, for vehicle needs, maintenance needs, staff, technology, the whole 9 yards, and then ultimately an implementation plan. So key activity centers was something that the entire project was centered around, and we looked at Oregon City, and we went through the process of trying to identify some key areas in Oregon City that we needed to serve. You'll see a list of that in the lower left-hand corner. So places like the Oregon City Transit Center to allow others to connect to TriMet, Smart Service out of Wilsonville, CAT out of Canby and South Clackamas. We wanted to give people access to higher education at Clackamas Community College. We have residential areas here in Oregon City that are underserved, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of what the whole plan was initially based off of, is how to get transit access to all of these activity centers. So in terms of the service model, it's recommended that we use something called a deviated fixed route. So when talking about transit, there's a few different types, but fixed route is what most people know, and that's what TriMet is. Bus goes from point A to point B with fixed stops in between. A deviated fixed route is similar in that it operates along a route. It goes from point A to B and has designated stops, but it will also deviate from that route up to 3/4 of a mile to pick people up or drop people off for various reasons. Maybe the person that we're picking up is not able to walk that far to a stop. Maybe there's some mobility device issues that need to be dropped off at the door, a variety of needs. And so we have the fixed route, but we'll deviate 3/4 of a mile. And then additionally, we ultimately decided that it must serve Clackamas Community College and the transit center, and then should serve as many of the following key locations as possible to make it the most effective for Oregon City. All right, so this is a busy screen, but ultimately this is what we do when we go through this with the consultant to lay everything out, and it's basically a variety of routes. They're all compared to each other in the table up in the left-hand corner. Anything and everything from how long it's going to take to run, how much of a buffer we need to have in order to deviate from the route, population coverage, and job coverage. And up in the upper right-hand corner, we ultimately landed on a recommended route. So this recommended route ended up being a long route, but it was important to proceed forward with this route because it served 7 of the 8 key activity centers. As you can see, within a 1/4 mile area, it captures just over 15,000 people and almost 8,500 jobs. It's a long round trip, about 100 minutes, and route length is almost 21 miles. But there are so many areas of Oregon City right now that are underserved by TriMet that it made sense to go ahead and move forward with a longer route to serve more people. So shuttles have to run what we call headways or timing based on their trip length, right? So with a trip length of 100 minutes, if you run every 30 minutes, obviously you have to have more buses. If you run every 90 minutes, you don't have to have as many. And so we will settle somewhere probably in the middle, looking at running about 60-minute headways. Funding in the first year allows for about 60 hours of service per week and about 65 hours in the second year. So during the first year of service, we will be operating, we're looking to operate Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to try to capture the majority of the riders. And then when we proceed into the second year, depending on what ridership looks like, we'll look to add Saturdays, which would be something like 11 to 4 service. In the long term, what will happen is Clackamas County, along with Oregon City, and then the contractor that's actually operating the service, will look to evaluate kind of all the ridership numbers and make sure that the times that we're operating make sense. Maybe we need to make it earlier, maybe we need to run it later, maybe we condense the hours during the week and we need to expand on the weekends, but those decisions can be made after we're operating for 2 or 3 years and trying to really understand ridership trends. Right now, we've purchased 2 vehicles. They're all ADA accessible. They have bike racks and they're 14 seats. They're what is called a cutaway bus. It's a smaller bus, not something like TriNet size. And we are looking, as I said, to contract out these services. And by contracting out, we look to companies that do this for a living, right? That can take care of maintenance, storage, dispatching, answering phones, all that type of stuff. And then our financial plan for this will also include fleet replacement needs, maintenance needs, all of that stuff, and it will project out, when we need to replace vehicles, when we may look to expand, and all of that will be incorporated into this plan. So the ridership estimates are really unknown, but our best guesses are based on currently operating shuttles, and all of these shuttles currently operate in Washington County. You have the Grove Link out in Forest Grove, and the Tualatin Shuttle in Tualatin, North Hillsborough Link out in Hillsborough. And so the forecasted ridership is about 6 to 8 per an hour. And if we land in that range, we're right on target with the other shuttles in the area, and that's what we're hoping for in the first year. So next steps are basically take this final plan, make any further adjustments that need to be made with feedback from Oregon City and other partners, develop a full marketing and branding strategy so we can get it out there and ensure that people know about this before it goes live in January. And then coordinate with the community partners, more specifically the other transit providers, to make sure all their schedules line up and they make sense, so we're not dropping people off ahead of other transit providers or behind other transit providers, leaving people having to wait for long periods of time. And then we'll take it to the Board of County Commissioners to kind of get the final sign-off, and we should be up and running. So that's what I have for the evening. I'm not sure, Katie, if others have questions. I'm obviously more than willing to answer any questions anybody might have.
Are there any commissioners with questions? I see Commissioner McGrath and then Commissioner Smith.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Lyle-Smith. Christina Babcock, great overview, and couple of questions. So do you have any idea of what you might be calling this?
So that is still something to be discussed. So I mentioned briefly, we have 4 different projects we're working on. So we have this Oregon City last mile shuttle, we have a Clackamas industrial last mile shuttle, we're looking at some commuter stuff along 205 and then Milwaukee. So there's some discussion about if we want to call out each of these shuttles as this is the Oregon City shuttle, this is the Clackamas industrial shuttle, or if we want to refer to all of them as Clackamas County shuttles as a whole. So that's one of those finer details that needs to be refined prior to implementation in January.
And then my other question is, are there going to be stops like we see that TriMet has, or are they going to be just a sign? Because obviously, if this thing gets started next year, we don't know what the weather's going to be, and I would hope that they would be, not weather resistant, but weather, at least provide some protection from weather, whether it's, sun beating down or it's, one of our little monsoons.
So stop investments are substantial, and so when starting any projects like this, they are definitely poles in the ground with a sign to start with. We need to ensure that the success of the project and the ridership is there for a lot of reasons. And then what we'll do is we move into year 2 and 3 is we'll look to make what we would call infrastructure adjustments. So we'll track ridership numbers, and we'll track the locations that have the highest ridership numbers, and we'll look to enhance those stops first and then go from there.
Commissioner Smith?
So, my hope would be that the branding is local, rather than regional. I think that is gonna help, brand it and I think that'll be key to ridership. I know that may not be necessarily the way it goes, but I think the more we locally brand it, the better it's gonna be. It says it just will not stop at the high school, which clearly is not necessarily something that is needed at this point in time. But it does stop at Clackamas Community College, correct?
Correct.
So students would, so when and if we ever go back to school, students would walk from the transit center at the college to the high school. Would that, I assume that route could change over time?
Yes, so a couple things. Let me address the high school really quick, even though you didn't have a specific question. So in working with TriMet plans to make some route adjustments that will include adjusting a route to go by Oregon City High School.
Okay.
That should happen late 21, maybe mid 21. And so that was part of the consideration on not stopping by the high school to avoid the duplication of service. And then, yes, as you said, they can walk. To your second question about adjusting a route, yes. And this is the recommended route. This is what we have right now, but routes look really good on paper and don't always work out when you actually get out there and drive them. And so once we get a contractor on board and we start to walk through this, some of it's going to be about the contractor and myself and other people from Oregon City getting on these buses and riding them, and to ensure that this is the route that actually works. And then again, evaluating ridership numbers to see, what we need to do and do additional public outreach to see if changes need to be made in year 3, 4, and 5.
I just want to say thank you. This is something that we've all talked about for a long time, whether or not was going to be, TriMet or whether or not the city wanted to take on something like this on its own. So I think that this is really, it's awesome. And I think I appreciate the county for making a leap here and trying this out. And I think that it will be successful. I know we've all been waiting for it. So I'm excited about it. So thank you for your work on this.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
No problem. Well, I would simply like to say, as one who has managed many a project, this is a very thoughtful business plan. It anticipates all operational aspects, right down to maintenance and anticipated revenue streams. It's got a preliminary plan, and it's subject to adaptation as demands proceed. So I would just simply say, well done, and my compliments.
Thank you.
Yes, and my only comments, like I said, I heard this presentation at CIC, so I guess the preview, and I agree with you. I think it's a great program, but my only question is I'm curious where the funding is coming from, because I think it's important that if our taxpayers are paying into it, if it's a benefit, that it's helpful in our conversations that they know. And I'm not sure if this is coming from VRF funds or taxes or registration fees. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So I think everybody is familiar with House Bill 2017, which is the state payroll tax. So it falls under what we call the State Transportation Improvement Fund, otherwise known as STIF. Within STIF, there is a pot of money called regional coordination. And the idea behind the regional coordination dollars is that TriMet has shaved off a portion of their STIF dollars to provide to Washington County, Multnomah County, Clackamas County, SMART, CAT, South Clackamas Transit, all these other entities to provide service in TriMet's district that TriMet is either unable or unwilling to provide. So the Oregon City Last Mile Shuttle is an example of dollars coming from TriMet through the Regional Coordination Program to provide this service. It is simply too costly for TriMet at this point to provide the service. And so when you talk to your citizens, yes, they are paying it because everybody that's working pays this payroll tax, and employers pay payroll tax as well. And so the one thing I would note is that as of today, the regional coordination dollars are capped at $3 million a biennium, and the $3 million has been tapped out in terms of projects across the metro region. So there is no more dollars that are available for additional projects. However, right now, Oregon City is funded. Oregon City will be funded in the next biennium. I have confirmation of that. The 22-23 funding cycle is funded as well. And then after that, there's no reason to think that the Oregon City Shuttle wouldn't be funded, provided that it's successful. But there is no other additional money to add to it, right? So if we needed to expand service significantly, if we needed to purchase additional vehicles, then additional funding conversations have to be had.
Okay. I just think that's helpful from a policy perspective, and we get asked a lot of times, people complain about paying taxes and complain about Metro's overreach or this or that. And so it's helpful for us to know a little bit, because I do think it's a great program, and I sincerely hope it's successful in Oregon City. Commissioner McGriff?
Yes, I wanted to ask an additional question and a request. So the request is that would we be able to get a copy of the PowerPoint? And then the second one is back to my question about shelters. I know that you say that they're not in the budget, but I would like to suggest that maybe somewhere in the review that if there is a site or two where you think that it would be appropriate, I think it would really help, even if it's a refurbished TriMet shelter that they have that they're not using, that maybe they could consider donating it or giving it to the project, because the more that we make it accessible for people in terms of the waiting part, I think it's going to be more successful, at least initially, if there's, if you find a site where you think, oh gosh, I think a lot of people might come here, and it would be great if you had some place to stand out of the weather. So it's just a consideration.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, and seeing no other hands raised, I appreciate you coming and giving the presentation, especially on short notice, so thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Great. All right, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 4, citizen comments. Ms. Riggs, do we have people in the audience?
Yes, we do. We have 3 citizen comments. We will start with Dorothy Dulstred. If you could please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name, and city of residency for the record, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes.
My name is Dorothy Dulstred. I live in Berkeley Hills neighborhood in Oregon City. I've been a resident since 1975. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I usually don't even need a microphone, but however, I'm kind of known mainly as the person who's the heritage tree lady, just because I've nominated so many trees and parks. However, I came to City Hall to attend the PRAC meeting a week and a half ago, and I didn't realize that the invitation was Zoom only. I just saw the regular notice that everyone gets, that Katie sends out, but I don't think it was Katie that sent it out this time. But anyway, I did notice that there's Park Place there, and I wanted to come and see why and give comment on it in case they had questions. What seems to me and very odd is that Park Place Park was nominated as a heritage tree. It's been under observation for over 2 years. There is one tree on that stand that has been under suspicion, that everyone has realized that it's under distress. So as the tree code has changed and that we said that we want to have arborist reports done on trees that are distressed in our parks before we remove them and or nominate if it looks distressed, made me very happy that I submitted a arborist report that sense of place arborists supplied to you at no cost to our city, and no thank you either. However, when I watched that PRAC meeting and I saw that Park Place has been brought back to PRAC, it had already been approved and was supposed to come to the commission. I've been sending reminders so it doesn't expire like it could. So I've been sending monthly reminders to saying, I realize the COVID's on, but if we can get this on the agenda, it'd be a good thing. Happiness is a good thing, because it's always been referred to as the feel-good program. But it has also brought protection to waterboard park trees. That gave real teeth in the vandalization of those trees that were done up there. And none of those trees are accessible and visible. However, what I got out of the last PRAC meeting was that this is being brought back to PRAC for their approval yet again or disapproval. And that's what I found. Because now that you're bringing it up that you don't want to nominate a few of the oaks, which is about 14, that are on hillside because they have invasive plants or rubbish around them, and that they're not accessible to the public, so in that case, they should not be nominated as a heritage tree. Well, if that's the case, we wouldn't have done Waterboard Park. We wouldn't have had teeth bitten into the lawsuit. Also, when we got our grants, we got thousands of dollars given to us because they're heritage trees, and we needed to remove the invasive plants around them, the ivy. There were no trails in that park, except for that was done by the homeless, because we're up there all the time cleaning. The homeless situation has improved. We have similar at Park Place Park. Not necessarily homeless up in there, very much, but a sense of pride to that area, and a stand, a significant stand of 15 white oaks, ranging from, I can't lick my fingers, 280 years old to 150. Two of them at 345 years old, and the one is ailing is 314 years old. Now, I'm not saying we have to save that tree because the arborist report said it would be actually too expensive to save it because of the old-time road that was built there. It could be used as a good example of what we want to do in the future and how we might build around our oaks. We may not need to, but we can leave that there until the time comes, and when we remove it, we can say, gee, we learned something from that, when we work on our other parks or we're doing a housing development. The long-term effects of that can affect a tree. And actually, even when listening to that, the stand of Atlas cedars was in question. When one person commented, well, those are quite unique trees, and they are very unique trees, and they average 157 years old between them all. When measuring them all, you get an average of 162 to 177. They're built in a line. They were probably built as a barrier or a property line, but they were planted over 150 years ago. They're significant, they're healthy, but now it was like, well, they were dropping some limbs. Every tree drops the limbs. My camper down elm tree, my front yard is littered with little limbs. And then I just feel like, and then they want to change code to NRC, or to Heritage Tree Program. I'm not well-spoken. I just am upset because they said they emailed me, and they did not. I got the same notice as everyone else. But I just think I should have been, oh, Dee Dee, we're going to take some real changes to the nomination that I spent a lot of hours on. And we've had the soil and conservation people out there looking at that stand. I've got to get off, but the whole city, all of you have been CC'd into those emails, and all of you have seen the Arbor support. I'm so upset about how you're dismantling anything in this city that gets passed, but if it's not to your convenience, oh, let's just go back and see if we can dig up some more issues. It's wrong. Thank you
Your
very
time is
much.
up. Thank you. Ms. Riggs, do we have anybody else?
Yes, so next is Gina Gonzalez.
Hey, Ms. Gonzalez, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, good evening, Commission. My name is Gina Gannon Gonzalez, and I'm an Oregon City resident. I am here to share an update on the campaign to recall Dan Holliday. On September 21st, the campaign turned in over 3,400 collected signatures to City Hall. On October 1st, the Clackamas County Elections Office informed us that 3,037 signatures were verified, qualifying the recall for a ballot. Thank you, Oregon City, for standing up for ethical leadership. After the signatures were verified, Mayor Holliday was given until October 6th to resign. Unfortunately, he did not. Therefore, a recall ballot will be mailed to Oregon City voters with a return deadline of November 10th. In Mr. Holliday's justification statement, he claims that this is a reckless recall. I find this ironic because it's in his own reckless behavior that prompted this recall. The mayor's statement claims he is serving all residents of Oregon City. If that were true, why does Mayor Holliday constantly berate private citizens at both the commission meetings and on his personal social media? He claims that he has kept the city on budget. Our question is, does this include the balance taxpayers have had to pay for lawsuits stemming from his unethical and reckless actions? He claims he's built strong relationships with local and county leaders. If this were true, they'd be standing up for him. Instead, our 4 current commissioners, 4 former mayors, school board members, and county commissioners from both the Republican and Democratic parties have all supported this recall. Mr. Holliday claims to stand for the rule of law. I'm curious how he can say that with 2 restraining orders for domestic abuse, a record that includes driving with a suspended license, reckless driving, driving while uninsured, driving under the influence, and violations of election law. Mr. Holliday's 200-word statement does not reflect the damage he has done to our city, but it does take credit for the hard work of others. For example, Mayor Holliday claims that the new library is part of his success. But the truth is, most of the advocacy work for the library was done before Dan became mayor. Thank you to Mayor Neely and the dedicated group of volunteers who made our new library a reality. He claims to have worked for the Oregon City's top-rated roads. However, Public Works is under the direction of the entire City Commission, so Dan's involvement in that statement is suspect. His statement says he will always stand with our police officers. We'd like to thank all the police officers and their family members who signed the recall petition. Mayor Holliday stated, "Help me help you keep Oregon City a great place." And that is exactly what we are doing by recalling him. Thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Riggs?
And last, we have Paul Edgar. And Mr. Edgar has passed around a statement that everyone has received at the dais, and I'm sorry, Commission President Rachel L. Smith, I'll have to send it to you after the meeting.
That's fine. Mr. Edgar, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Paul Edgar. I live in Kenema, part of Oregon City. Thank you very much for allowing me to have a citizen comment. I'm a veteran. I've also been on the Clackamas County Historic Review Board for the county. And right here in Oregon City, we have an opportunity. And it's called these historic Camp Adair buildings. And what could we do that is appropriate? And so myself and others have been working around the clock recently, trying to come up with many proposals. I know a lot of people have been working for years trying to come up with ideas that are responsible, that effectively save the buildings. I had the opportunity to go walk through the buildings completely and examine them, and the interior structure of those buildings are solid. The windows, a lot of the windows are fully intact, and they've just been boarded up. But so I I made a presentation to the Clackamas County Veterans Advisory Council that I'm on. And I talked about this, and there was a lot of people saying, yes, let's figure out something we can do. So what is here in this proposal is a proposal to the city of Oregon City. It's about saving the buildings and reusing them, repurposing them, because they have provenance, they have history to them. And it's the idea of what could we do. So in talking around, one of the key elements was trying to move them. So I went over to talk to Terry Ermer, see what he could do. And within that, he had I had some ideas too. And what we have, and I was part of creating the Clackamas County Veterans Village, and it's right on 185th or 115th off of Jennifer. And it goes back there, and this is to take veterans that are houseless, that are often on the streets. And what we're looking at is taking property right next door to it and proposing to do this. But it takes time to move the county commissioners and everybody into the same window of understanding what we could be doing and why it's important. So this is asking for time. Asking for a moment, because we're pulling together what we perceive as an effective coalition, hoping that we can, if we work together, come up with an idea with your help, with the city commission's help, in trying to say, okay, where can we put them? One of the places was in Corvallis, at the original site of Campadere, they call it Campadere Village. But we see this place right in Clackamas County as an excellent place to do it, right next to the Veteran Village, and then expanding that into permanent housing right around this. So this could be part of the clustered housing development. Terry Emmerich has offered to bring in houses completely, put them on foundations, and rebuild them, and have them really ready to be occupied, and then on a one deal, turn them over to the county or turn them over. So what we're trying to do is get permanent housing at under $100,000. The last housing development done up on Molalla Avenue in Pleasant up there, those cost over, that development was $7.15 million for 24 units. That's right at $300,000 a dwelling unit. And we need affordable housing for people in need. And this is an example of taking these buildings, making it part of a cluster, and working together to build a coalition of people saying, hey, we can create something that's affordable, that will meet the needs of the future. And I hope you read this, think about it, and have it as part of your considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edgar. Ms. Briggs, are there any other citizen comments?
There are no other citizen comments, but it looks like there are two commissioners that are wishing to speak.
Go ahead.
Paul, I'm wondering if this is something that we could discuss at some point or ask questions about. And I don't know if this would be the time to do that, or if during our commissioner comment time would be time to do that. Because I have some questions about this.
I'm supportive of your question.
What?
I'm supportive of what you're requesting.
I'm supportive of discussing it right now, right here, right now.
Would it be okay to talk about this for a brief moment right now?
Sure, as long as this doesn't turn into a 30-minute waterboard park discussion. So, yeah, if we can keep it brief, and just note that I haven't seen anything that's in front of you, so.
Right.
But go ahead.
Paul, couple questions. So the first question is, in terms of this proposal, you've reached out to the parties mentioned here?
Yes.
In general?
Yes.
Okay. So this is going to be, and I see, this could very easily get into an hour discussion about Waterboard Park. And we don't want to do that. So the timing issue is the critical piece, because my understanding is one of the reasons we're on, the question really here is how those buildings tie into what we make a decision of that being a park space. And we are, at least shooting to try to do that before the new year. If the buildings are still there, whether or not that causes a wrinkle to that, I don't know, and that's really the discussion. You know, does that mean that there couldn't be some sort of solution where the buildings could, in this proposal, be moved somewhere to a temporary place before the county figures out what they want to do with it or whatever? I'm open to that conversation. I'm open to really any conversation about the ability to possibly save these buildings if it's done in a similar way to this and be used in a similar way. And I'm actually open to this idea of using the money that was spent to demolish them to help with that. I'm not necessarily sure about the specifics about demolishing the pads and stuff like that, but I'm open to some ideas that are here. I just want you to know that I think the timeline is a concern of us because of what we want to do with that property. So if there was some sort of strategy on how to deal with that in the stage sequence where we could maybe figure out how do the buildings get out of there first, and they get stored somewhere before but that's a risk, because if we do that and someone takes them, it's not going to be something that the city's going to store waiting for them to go somewhere. We're going to want to get rid of them and say, it's now yours, and then someone's going to have to figure out what to do with them after that. I'm open to that conversation and willing to do that, but I think right now our priority has definitely been the park first, building second, or you know what I mean? So anyway, that's all I want to say on that.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Well, I just read this for the first time, and I think the key word on here is it's a proposal. And unfortunately, much as I admire your efforts, it's fraught with assumptions. It's got the assumption that maybe Camp Adair Village would take it. Maybe the county would approve the use of that land. Maybe Emmert would bid it and successfully be able to move it. The financing would be in place, and in fact, even the suitability of the buildings for occupancy. And I think from the city's perspective, this has been an ongoing conversation for a long time, and I would defer to Commissioner Smith. We have a task at hand, and that's our primary task. My recommendation is you have to simplify the proposal. You have to simply say, I've got a buyer, I've got the ability to move it, and I concur with Commissioner Smith. If I'm going to spend $22,000 for demolition, I don't mind putting that into movement. That doesn't hurt us a bit. We do something worthwhile. But in the end, the proposal has to be simplified. You've got a buyer, you've got the ability to move it, the financing's in place to move it, and you've got a storage area for it. Because what you're trying to do is accomplish the total task, a series of events here that are not going to come together in short order. Right. So give yourself the ability, give yourself some breathing room with a simplified proposal, because the city, our first goal is to proceed on the primary matter at hand, which is the park itself.
Well, I concur with your assessment. I think you are very, very accurate there on that. What we're trying to do, what we need, really honestly need, there's a couple county commissioners that we need to bring into. One of them is Martha Schrader. Martha is a person right in the middle who's wonderful, a wonderful lady, caring and does things, but when she gets on board, everybody gets on board, okay? Another one would be Ken Humberson. He needs to get on board. If we had the county give this commitment that they're willing to partner, then most of the dominoes start to fall. Right, bang, 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 bang. So this is the key, is that we've been going through all of these things. We've got a person that can move them, and the cost of moving them is greater than $22,000. Okay. So we need partners, and the question is these buildings historic enough and important enough to rally people around to say, okay, it's worth it. And I think it is, because I think it's part of our history, and we're trying to save it, and we're trying to repurpose it. And so my hope is that as you said, there are a lot of issues, but the simple one is we need to have the county commission to have a buy-in, and we need 3 county commissioners.
Sir, I disagree. As I stated, the simple proposal, that we are on a timeline here. We've got a stated termination time when the decision has to be made. And I would say again to you, you're trying to muster all these assets, and that's a time-consuming thing. If you simplify your proposal, I need a buyer, I need the ability to move it, and I need a point to store it. And when I accomplish those 3 things, which are much simpler than this Herculean task you're attempting, you then buy yourself time to accomplish that which you seek to do in the long run.
Yeah, well, I can see the 3 key points, and I know the place where we need to put it, and I know that the land is there, and it's fallow, and it could be used, and it's not being used. And so it's a perfect place to do it. And I've got the person that can move them. And so now the next question is can we get an agreement to move them to that place? And do we have a partner? So I'm going to try. And if I have some help from you guys, I will do my best. I care.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Exner. I'd like to make a comment too. I think in general, I 100% support what Commissioner Smith said. He's right on the mark, and so is Commissioner O'Donnell. But yeah, I'm totally open to other options if we can make it happen. And our commission has set out some priorities, and we're trying to make sure that, that we follow through on our commitments. And this is one of our top priorities to get this resolved. But I would love to have someone take them. We've tried to give them away. And I'm not sure how quickly they could be made into a habitable and a building that could be occupied. But that's not for me to figure out. I'm with Commissioner Smith, and I would totally support anybody who could make it happen that we don't have to demolish them. So, Mr. Conkle.
Thank you, Madam President. So, just to recap, I was given direction to perform a lot line adjustment, get it recorded, bring it back as an ordinance that would designate the upper yard as a charter park. We have 2 readings. It goes into effect in 30 days. You wanted that done before the end of the year. We've made significant progress on that front. Second component was the buildings themselves. We advertised this in the paper. Bids are due at 2 p.m. on Friday. We have already done an RFP for a demolition service. And my understanding was that part of this negotiation between the commission and agreement was that the buildings needed to go as it was becoming a charter park. I really need direction, because at 2 o'clock on Friday, if I don't have a bid, we are moving forward with demolition unless I'm told otherwise.
I, for one, am not going to change the direction the commission previously gave you. It's been an ongoing discussion. It's been clear to everyone. If they can provide a buyer for that dollar and they have the ability to get them out of there, again, I just distill it down to those 3 components. And I don't mean to be harsh, but it's been an ongoing discussion. You have been given direction. You have fulfilled that direction. And we have a timeline within which we want to accomplish our primary objective, which is the park.
Mr. McGriff?
Yes, forgive me if I'm speaking for you, but I know that Commissioner Smith and I both feel that preservation is preferable to demolition. Even deconstruction is preferable to demolition. But we would need, on its face, a commitment by the commissioners, the county commissioners, to allow the buildings to be placed there. That would be the only way I could even consider an extension of time. This is, as Commissioner O'Donnell said, this has been a priority. We have made commitments to our community regarding this, and I love the idea of the proposal. If we can get a commitment by the commissioners by Friday to say, yes, they would allow this to be moved there, we've got other dominoes that can fall. But right now, we've given our manager direction of what we think needs to be done. And I think we have to proceed. I'm not supportive of demolition, but it's the last resort.
Well, I'd like to make it clear that I actually agree with you. I am not supportive of demolition. It is a last resort. But I'm also aware that this has been ongoing for a line. Here we are at the 11th hour. And again, even if he gets the support from the county commission, and that would be a major step, then the only item that remains, everybody's got $1 they can put in. Heck, I'll give you the $1. But past that, I mean, we've got the movement component, which needs to be addressed, and that needs a concrete solution, not an aspiring, I hope. You know, do you have a bid from Emmert?
No.
Okay, and I don't want to get in a lengthy conversation, but I mean, it's questionable, how much funds do you have to raise if the other elements fall into place, and you need a funding source, and where would you get it? So I stand by my commitment to our previous course of action, in the hopes that you can pull this out of the hat.
Are you gonna make a change?
Yeah. Mr. Smith?
What would be the timeline for the actual demo?
Good question. It's not, I want to say there's 30 days to get that done. I need to check that. I better, rather than say that,
Yeah, I think.
can I check that?
We
'Cause I'm not
were
sure.
prepared for this conversation. This is the first time I've seen this as well. We did the RFP. It was a sealed bid process. We received the bids. We have them in hand. There's going to be some mobilization. We're not under contract at this point because we had this 2 p.m. on Friday during the 30-day public announcement to be able to purchase it for $1. So we've been kind of sitting on that for the last 10 days or so.
That closes Friday.
Yes.
Friday.
Are the bids all for demolition?
There is the option of Mr. Emmert submitting a bid to
Move them.
Remove them.
remove those.
Bids closed, right?
You said they close on Friday?
Well, for the citizen, yeah. For someone to come by it, correct. Yeah.
So they could submit a bid.
Yep.
That gets you there, Paul. I mean,
To get the
he's
buildings
got
up.
storage capacity, he's got plenty of properties to
Right.
store them on.
He does.
Yeah, he does.
I've seen it along 224 and other places.
And yeah.
I guess so.
Slow down.
A lot of ideas. I guess I'm just looking for some direction because Friday's going to be here quick.
Yeah, it's like 2 days from now.
And I've heard,
I think the direction, we're sticking with our original plan of what we told you.
Like you said, Emmert could submit a bid.
Commissioner McGriff, I've heard from Commissioner O'Donnell, that's where I'm at. So I believe, I'm not sure where Commissioner Smith, but that's the
No, I think
majority of.
I'm with that. I mean, I think, there's an option there, and we hear what happens if, because I don't think it's gonna take all these steps. I think if someone has property and someone, wants to move them, then that's it. And, is it possible to have an answer of that by Friday? Maybe.
It's possible.
Well, if they're motivated, the RFP's been out for a while, so if they're motivated, they should be able to put something in, at least for consideration by Friday. Mr. Conkle, are you okay with this direction?
yes, thank you.
All right, any other citizen comments, Ms. Riggs?
No further citizen comments, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So do we have an adoption of the agenda?
Yes, I'm fine with it.
Don't
Nope, you're not fine?
we have a general business on direction on extending the temporary parklets?
Yes, is there anything that you would like to pull from the consent agenda at this time?
No,
No, I don't.
I'm okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, then we're ready for general
Okay.
business.
Yeah, we don't have any public hearings, so general business, 7A, Who's taking this item?
Ms. Turway,
Mr. Kunkel?
I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Turway.
Thank you very much. Laura Turway, Community Development Director for the City of Oregon City. We are here tonight to, at a request of the City Commission, to bring back an agenda item regarding parklets and parking lot use for retail and restaurants. Thank you, Katie, for getting that up. Next slide, please. As you recall, earlier this summer, the City Commission approved use of parklets in the right-of-way, so on-street parking stalls to be used for businesses during COVID to help create physical distance and outdoor space for people to utilize for businesses. In the picture, you'll see the one, it's a double parklet with Nebbiolo and Arch Bridge as well.
Nope.
That's not
That's-
gonna be
it's
allowed.
Sorry, Ingrid's and Arch Bridge. Nebbiolo was approved, but is not constructed yet. Sorry about that. And then also, so there's two pieces to this program. There's this on-site parking lot component, and then there is this on-street parking lot component. So together, they provide options for businesses to serve their customers. Whether they have a parking lot, they can use portions of their parking lot for outdoors usage, or if they have on-street parking, they can use that too. If they have both, they can use the combination thereof. Next slide. The City Commission approved the program from July 16th to November 30th, and then to break over the winter and come back on March 15th through November 30th. And there was a request to have a discussion for the commission if we want to, next slide, bridge the gap and allow them to be extended over the winter time. So that'd be December 1st to March 14th. Next slide. Do you want this? Sure, thank you. As you recall, for the timing of these, they got a $25 permit to do the first season, and then they were gonna come back with another $25 permit to do this next season. 2020 is permitted separate than 2021 because, again, it was gonna go away in the winter and then come back. So in the commission report, there is a listing of what we identified as primary advantages and primary disadvantages of retaining the facilities over the winter. We ended up contacting the facilities that both have the parklets and that are permitted and constructed, as well as the parking lot restaurants that are permitted and constructed, and asking them what they thought. And one of the primary advantages to extending the program is there was interest in them continuing to do it over the winter because it provided more square footage for their business. Could be a place where more customers would likely come, in their opinion, since they could be served outdoors. A lot of the logistics and infrastructure had already been established, so to continue to do it was a benefit from their advantage. Also, they identified that they thought other people may be willing to do more of these as well because it wouldn't have to go away. There was more certainty on how long it could be up and it would be a continuous use. And then the other thing that we heard was, it's gonna be a pain to disassemble all these, store them all winter, and then dig them back out. Some disadvantages we heard is that they're probably gonna need a cover of some type. Particularly on the parklet side, under those guidelines, we allow a sail or a pop-up shade, but not really actually any permanent cover, so we would need to go ahead and change that or allow some type of cover there. Also, we would likely need some type of lighting and heat, and depending on how they want to do that, it could be a little bit complicated. Same with gas and electrical connections, because we don't, already in the packet, we don't allow lines to go over the trees to connect to the parklet or under. So it would kind of have to be self-contained primarily. The ones in parking lots, they'd have to kind of maybe do some electrical work if they wanted to, or have, again, self-contained uses. A disadvantage may be that you're not really guaranteed that they'll be used. Someone could just get it permitted because they don't want to move it, And then snow removal for the ones in the right-of-way is a consideration, though they're on side streets, there's nothing on actual Main Street yet. And the problem is when the plow comes, it may push snow into the parklet, so the parklet person would have to deal with that. So just something to be mindful of. And then the last thing is that, as we identified before, we'd have to change some of our guidelines, because they really weren't written to deal with the winter. They were written for nicer weather events. So some of those changes would include allowing, as we discussed, more permanent roofing, making sure that that permanent roofing is structurally stable. Can it hold snow loads? Is it not going to fall on my head? So some connections there, or some type of review. Also, as we discussed, since the permits were just for short bits of time, we'd want to do another permit and relook at these structures, make sure that fire and building and everyone is checking off to make sure that they're safe. So those are some things that we would need to do, or that we had identified preliminarily. That is the end of my presentation. I'm just looking for some city commission direction as to if we want to extend the program over the winter. And you can be mindful that you are allowed to extend just the parklets or just the parking lot ones. Neither, both, it's all up to you. If you do choose to provide direction to staff to extend it, we'll come back with a new resolution for you.
Okay, I see we have questions. I didn't see who raised their hands first, so I'll go left to right. Mr. Commissioner Smith?
I raised my hand first.
Well, we knew this was gonna open a can of worms, and here it is. I have a lot of questions. Liz from downtown isn't in the meeting, or anyone from Downtown Association?
She is not.
Are you aware of what, because right now, how many parklets are actually, how many are permitted and how many are actually been installed?
All right, so on the parklet side, we have 3 that are permitted and installed, which is the double of Ingrid's Arch Bridge, and, well, that's the only one actually installed. Nebbiolo is permitted but not installed. And then I don't have the number of the other ones that are in the permitting process, but not actually.
Other ones meaning parking lots?
No, the ones on the on-street ones. But for parking lots, there is 3 approved, which is OC Brewing, Coney Island, and Tacho's. And then that there are 3 in code enforcement, which is Ice House, Little Cooperstown, and Trails End.
Okay, so the parklet, I'm gonna focus on the parklets first. The parklets, there's only 2 that have been installed.
Correct.
1 that is waiting to be installed, but why is that? The plan isn't to install that before?
No.
In October. I mean, they were waiting to find out this decision before installing it, I assume?
What I heard from Liz was it kind of happened late in the year that they got the approval, or that they had applied or something. And so they were kind of, since you couldn't have it over the winter, they weren't going to install it and then uninstall it for a short bit of time. So I don't know if this would have an effect. She did identify that Main Street organization supports the extension.
And then you're not sure if there's more that were approved that haven't been installed?
Only one other one has approved but not installed, which is Nebbiolo. So the double parklet, Archbridge, Ingrid's approved and installed, and then Nebbiolo approved, not installed.
Okay, so 2 and 1.
Yeah.
And the Nebbiolo one, did they submit plans for that already?
It's already approved. Mm-hmm.
When you get to my turn, I can speak to that, because I have some other information.
Okay, and I'm gonna be quite honest here. When this came to us, we were all in the position that we're gonna do whatever we can to help businesses. And so I think we let some things slide that we might not have normally done because we really felt like this was an opportunity to help business get through the summer season. And the reason that we kind of wanted an end date for November was to kind of use that as an adjustment to see how we go forward from there. If we fill that gap, that creates a whole bunch of other problems that really opens the door into a whole bunch of more discussions. Because quite honestly, I think the one thing I regret that we didn't do, and I may kind of propose that we rethink that, is to have a consistent template for what each of these things look like, which I don't know this, but clearly the 2 parklets that have been installed in Main Street that were displayed on this photograph at the beginning of this slideshow, clean, neat, well done. I don't know if the other parklets that have proposed to be installed fit that same template or if it's a completely another separate design. Because I think one of the things that would make me more inclined to support this going forward and to bridge that gap is if there was a consistency to what all of those looked like. Because my fear is similar to the discussion we had with the cell phone towers, is that if we just let this happen all over town, because if we're going to close the gap, we're really taking a step as a city saying this is going to be a thing that we're going to support broader than just a temporary fix to help businesses. And if we're going to go there, I'm not opposed to it. I just think we need to be very specific of how these things look and that we're going to not have random contraptions all built around the city. And I think that complicates things more when you start talking about roofing and heating and lighting. If every different parklet decides how to put their own canopy up, it's going to look horrible. And it's going to look, so I think if we're going to take that step, then we really need to start saying these are the guidelines, and whether or not, I would love to be able to say, this is the template. If you want to do it, you follow this template. The other concern to me, though, is some of these, especially parking lots, were installed before we even voted on making this a program. And so do we really think if we put an end date of November that people are just going to pack these things up? No, they're going to leave them out there, unless we actually enforce them to remove them. But, Mike's Drive-In and some of these other locations, Tacha's, I mean, they've installed those. They have no intention of removing those. So are we going to really go in there and start removing those things? That really concerns me as well. I think if we had a consistent expectation for heating, lighting, and what these things look like with the covers, maybe I think we could go forward with it. But then, the whole snow removal thing and all that, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, this is complex. And I don't know how much we really want to, I'm wondering if that gap of the winter is a time for us to really figure out, is this something we're gonna want permanently? Because I have a hard time saying, if we take this next step, that this is just a temporary thing. I think we're making a real statement by making a decision with this right now if we're going to open our doors to having this be a permanent kind of thing in Oregon City. And I don't think that's a bad idea. I just think we're going to have to spend a little bit more time making it work if we want to do that. So I guess I would not be opposed to saying the ones that are currently there could stay, and then we could kind of, answer these questions and move forward. I just don't know how to go back to the ones that have been approved if they are completely out of step with the template that I would kind of like to see. I think there could be a general template, but I just want some consistency. I'm sure I have a lot more to say on it, but I'll leave it at that for now.
All right, thank you. Before we go to Commissioner McGriff, Ms. Riggs, do we have any public comments on this item?
So we don't actually have any public comments, but right before the meeting started, we did get a last minute submittal from OC Brewing. So they did submit a letter of support, and I do have copies for the commission here, and then I've also sent it via email. So you should have received it, Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith. That's all I have for this item.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McGriff.
Yes, thank you. Well, as your representative on the Downtown Oregon City Association Board, I will tell you that I know that there are some concerns by downtown business owners about us ending this. So let me back up a little bit and basically say that I've had 3 businesses talk to me about the fact, and 2 of them, I will say honestly, are parking lot owners. So they feel that they have the ability to cover their facilities, particularly an example is Oregon City Brewing. They have their own tent. They have all the requirements to meet outdoors, seating. They have heaters. They've been doing this for a couple of years anyway. And so I think we've got a little bit of a difference between the parking lots and the ones that are on the street. And I would say, yes, I agree with you. The people who are already in process or have permits, that we should be doing whatever we can to help them keep them. I would feel very, I would not feel really good if we had to say to the owner of the Arch Bridge that, okay, now you have to dismantle your facility. I mean, they put a lot of time and effort in it, as you know, and you like it.
You're right, which is why I think it should be the template.
Right. So here's the other thing. I am aware that one of the businesses that does have a permit, and as Ms. Turway said, got late in the game, they didn't want to build it and then have to take it down if they can't keep it up over the winter time. And they do use outside seating right now. I've also heard the comment that some comments have been directed to me that we're being too picky about aesthetics and that we need to loosen that up a little bit. So my response to that was the reason that we specified the things that we said we would not feel were appropriate in parking lots and on the street are the things that are in the code currently. And I said, I don't see that changing. And I will stick with that. I was in Portland this week and I took a picture of some parklets that were on East Burnside Street. I just sent 2 of those to Ms. Turway, that one that matches the one at Arch Bridge. I have other pictures that I just haven't off my phone. And my big question for 2 of them was, how do you meet ADA access? It just went off the curb and then there you were in the street. So I had concerns about that from just access point. So I would like to see us extend, but I also want to make sure that we are not making the new requirements onerous, particularly for the parking lots. Now, again, my opinion is that the ones in the street do have to meet a little bit different standard, and it's because it's part of the public right-of-way, and regardless of what's there, in the long run, the city is liable for what happens in that street. And so we don't want something to be put up that's rickety or would not meet some standard. But I also think we can take into consideration the cost to help these businesses that already have them extend their season. I do agree with your statement about, yes, we need to revisit it. I agree, yes, we do not want it hung from buildings or trees or whatever to make a cover. What could we do to simplify it and still make it viable to help our businesses? So that was my goal in bringing this forward for us to have a discussion. And so I do support your proposal to say, yes, let's extend the ones that we already have, and then we need to go back and do some more work on the other part.
I'm not sure I said that, but.
Well, that's what I heard. That's what I wrote in my little notes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we can extend it just for a couple of businesses and preclude others. I think we would have to keep the proposal, what we put forward as is. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Well, my first question is, on what date were the parklets first authorized?
July 16th.
So July 16th, August, September, so we're 3 months down the road. And in those 3 months, and I do want to compliment the Arch Bridge. They have done a phenomenal job, and I do agree if I could make that the template they have provided, it's attractive, it's protected by the heavy pottery outside to protect the occupants, it's a wonderful piece of work. But let's talk about parklets. We haven't seen people take advantage of it in the season that it would be most beneficial, so they have foregone essentially almost a 90-day benefit period. The other thing that really concerns me about this, you talked about established infrastructure. The necessary infrastructure to support a summertime booth versus a booth that you intend to occupy in the winter, which would involve possibly a roof, possibly walls, possibly a heat source. The report deals with the difficulties of delivering gas and electrical service. I just think that we're entering into a realm that we need to put that on hold along with establishing a template, because I don't want my downtown looking like a shanty town. I want it looking good and attractive. Now, as far as people like Archbridge, they did a great job. I don't want them to have to disassemble that. But the question is, how do you control any modifications that would involve those things like heat source, electrical provision, and things like that? So I think it needs a review, and quite honestly, I think the simplest thing is to put it on hold until we revisit the program and talk about those things. You're going to need input from people like the fire department and issues of flammability, public safety. What are the inspection criteria going to be? You start talking about structures and snow loads, you're entering into a whole different world versus an open booth. And I think it's like, what are we prepared to do and support as a city, and what form of regulation will that take, and what will our exposure be? And in terms of to talk separately about those things established in private parking lots, my safety concerns remain the same. How do you effectively and safely use those, and what inspection criteria do you apply? So I think for each business, the question is cost versus the additional revenue generation. And it would appear that in the first 90 days, very few have chosen that they thought that the revenue generation exceeds the cost, the expenditure.
The question is, how long did it take to actually get a permit? Which
I don't know, how long did it take from that date when we gave you said it was what, July 16th? Were permits available immediately, or were permits delayed for 30 days, or what was it?
No, we had a commitment to process permits quickly. What we found, particularly on the Parklet side, is that people didn't have their proof of insurance and that kind of stuff totally squared away yet.
All reasonable requirements.
Commissioner Smith.
Another aspect of this that concerns me greatly is with the combination of putting cover over these parklets and heat, that heat doesn't stay there unless you put up walls. And at what point do you put up walls that this is no longer an outside eating establishment? And what guidelines of COVID do you still deal with? It defeats the purpose of having an outdoor space if you put walls around it. It's just the same as eating inside the restaurant with some fresh air. But I think that, we have to also answer that question. What is the limitation in terms of putting a cover and side walls and how does that affect people's safety in terms of the state requirements? There's so many aspects of this. I don't even know how we start a conversation about it, honestly. I don't know.
Well, we could potentially say, I'm sorry, Commissioner, we could potentially say they can use them in their present configuration. I mean, if somebody wants to sit out there in January, middle of January, in the configuration they are, those that already exist, that's one solution. I still like your template, and I want a reasonable appearance, and I want some consistency that we can be proud of it. And I've got no qualms about extending it long-term with the proper controls. But I am concerned about the public safety aspects of it.
Well, I agree.
If I can pull up comments. This is a challenging and complex item. I came into this meeting not really having a set opinion either way. Like I was hoping that this would be a really open discussion to help me figure out a direction to provide to the city. because I see the good things that it provides to the businesses, to the couple of businesses who's put it in place, and therefore I want to support them and I want them to do well. But I share all of the same concerns that have already been voiced here. When we originally put this in place, the goal was for it to be a pilot and that we would be able to make adjustments over the wintertime as needed. My other real concern is that we're headed toward a real permanent path. If we keep these up, and it's harder to make changes, it's harder to go backwards if we don't have the break. I do agree that parking lots seem to be very different than parklets. I guess the only compromise that I feel like I can go to in the middle is what Commissioner O'Donnell just said of maybe you keep your same configuration, but I agree, by the time you do roofs and walls and all of that, we've defeated the whole COVID purpose, and now we've entered a whole new realm of, now we've just established a new way of dining in parking lots and stuff, and that we have to be really careful of not setting a ball in motion that we're unable to stop, because it was intentionally made to stop. We did it to support businesses, and we did it as a pilot, and we wanted to get feedback from them on what worked and what didn't. And I like the idea of a template because, so I guess to summarize, I think if we stop it, it gives us a chance and city staff a chance to work on this some more. Let's work on a potential. If we want to consider this as a permanent addition to our downtown and to our businesses that we're able to do this, then I think it needs to be a real thoughtful thing. And I think this commission seems to be pretty open to that if it's done in a really good way, because we want to support our businesses. So that's kind of where I'm at, I guess, it's unfortunate for the one business that's done really well of establishing a parklet. So I don't know if we want to allow it for parking lots as is and not for parklets, or we just, for me, it's either that or we say we're going to follow what we originally said, do it as a pilot, give us your feedback, let city staff work on this over the winter time, and let's revisit this when we start to implement it again in March.
Well, Commissioner Lyle-Smith, I'd like to see staff talk in depth with the people who already have them permitted and just get some of their feedback. I've heard a little bit of feedback because the Arch Bridge Parklet owner sits on the DOCA board, and so I've heard some of his concerns and so I'm not speaking for him, but one of the things he said, well, I would have done it this way regardless because I want it to look really good. But he did have some concerns about the permitting process, and so I guess the question I should have asked is, how long did it take to get the permit from the time the application was deemed complete? People are always going to complain about it's onerous and they have to submit stuff. Well, I looked at the application that we had. I actually received one in the mail for one of the nonprofits whose board I sit on, even though we would never do one. And I looked at it from the standpoint of, if I didn't know anything, could I fill this out? And I didn't think it was onerous. I thought some of the requirements were reasonable, particularly in the street. As I said, when I talked to a couple of the business owners, I said, you have to understand that the reason that some of these requirements are in here is that you are in the street. You're not on private property. There is definitely a difference. And one of the parklets I saw basically looked like, those little ropes that you see in the bank to keep you in your little line. That was the parklet. It was that around the seating. There was no ramp. There was just the curb and then some chairs. And I thought, well, if a car came down Burnside Street and ran into that, you're dead. The other one that I sent to Ms. Turway is basically more like the one that Jean submitted and looks really nice. It goes right from the street to the parklet. Then there was another one that was so the street is different. I really understand that. I understand the risk. That was my first thought, is the risk about being in the street. And people are not driving down Main Street at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but you never know. You never know what could happen. So like I said, I brought this on, asked to be put on the agenda so we could discuss it and then see how we wanted to move it. And I like everybody's ideas. I don't know how to summarize all that. And I'm sure Tony's sitting there going like, oh, everybody said something different, but what can we do? So let me ask this question. So what can we do about the ones that are currently there now? Not the ones that are need to be compliant, but the ones that are parking lots and the ones in the parklet that we have. I also know that the people, Sharice Miller, who is proposing the food carts, they want to put some sort of a cover or build a cover for their outdoor seating. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So I guess that's the question I have. Do we want to just say, no, we don't want to extend it, but it can stay, the one that's there can stay? I don't know. What do you think, guys thinking, I guess?
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I would distill my thoughts down again into a simpler direction. One is I would suspend the issuance of additional permits at this point. And that would allow, but I would allow the use of those that are already constructed to be continued to be used in their existing form. That means without the addition of any roofs, walls, heating sources, those type of things need to be reviewed. It also gives this commission the chance to review the program in its entirety, possibly establish standards and establish a template, which I think speaks to the appearance and attraction of our city. And that's what I would do. Again, the focus for me, and again, I do want to commend Archbridge. I mean, what they constructed is commendable. If somebody wants to sit there in the middle of January, God bless them, they can have it. But even the ones on the parking lots, you start modifying them beyond their present form, where are we going with this? You know, you start adding covers, heat sources, provision of electrical service. Those things need to be controlled by this city.
Commissioner Smith.
I'm leaning the same direction. I think it's going to be virtually impossible for us to tell people that have already set up parking lots that they're going to remove those for the winter. They're not. Not with the amount of work they've put in, clearly, in some of those locations. So I kind of feel the same way. I guess what I'm shocked by tonight is that this is a decision that we clearly said at the beginning we wanted feedback on, and we've gotten none. There's no representation other than Commissioner McGriff from the Downtown Association. The fact that there's no report from downtown, the fact that none of these businesses are here to speak for their success or lack thereof with what they're doing. Were all of those people notified about this topic tonight?
Yeah, I called and spoke with each of the parklets. So I spoke with Archbridge and Ingrid's, people with a parklet that's open. And so they both obviously identified support for parklets. Ingrid's identified that I think they only have 2 tables or something inside, right. So it doubled their capacity, or more than doubled. So that was their perspective. They were proud of their design too, so it was they're happy with the feedback that they've heard about it. I did speak with all 3 parking lots that were approved as well, OC Brewing, which is why you probably got this letter, and then Coney Island and Tachos, and they were both open to perhaps extending it over the winter. I do want to articulate a slight technical difference, because you could build a cover like you could build a building and have a restaurant underneath it, not in a parking lot. So like Mike's Drive-In was permitted through a totally different process than this. So there is always the option to build basically a canopy structure and have your restaurant much more permanent wise in that way. And so you've seen, bits and pieces of that around, but it looks similar to this program if you're just driving by.
Well, I'll pose a question. What are the legalities of then adding heat sources and electrical source with the addition of a cover?
We have spoken with the building department as well as Clackamas County Fire Department. There could be mechanisms in which that works or not. with Ingrid specifically, they were thinking of like, Christmas string lights kind of thing, and so not really a big thing there. There is a plug-in nearby, so if we would let them use a plug-in, they could use that for the Christmas tree lights down on Main Street. If not, they were thinking that there would be ambient light from inside the restaurant, and that might be okay. They just kind of have to see how it goes. And then they were interested in using, and Arch Bridge as well, just maybe like a propane heaters that you see at Home Depot or something like that. OC Brewing expressed interest in doing, how do I explain them? They're like a igloo. They look like a plastic tent.
Is it open or closed?
I didn't see exactly. He just told me to Google the thing, and I did, and we talked about it. But it's like a greenhouse meets igloo. So it's basically a room that's a big tent that you would serve through the winter, and just that tent. So you would rent your little tent area. And then Coney Island and Tachos didn't really have a plan, but they thought they would have to probably invest more infrastructure in order to have it year-round. They weren't anticipating it doing it year-round because the program wasn't year-round.
Well, the igloo thing throws me off because once again, it's a confined space if it truly is enclosed. My main concern remains the provision of heat and sources of ignition for fire hazards, and how do you control that? You know, I'm gonna put in radiant heaters, I'm gonna put in propane. How do we control that we do not place ourselves in a position of generating a fire?
We do have that on our current application, asking for things like sources of fire, I believe. And so the building department as well as the fire department have looked at them all to make sure, or if they were to mark, that they were have those temporary sources of heat. So
But again, Mr. Irwin, my main concern is once you modify the structure itself, you potentially put on a roof, and then you've got a radiant heater in proximity to the roof, and then the ability of people to escape from that, it starts approaching a controlled structure where you get engineering concerns and inspection concerns, as you said, even on snow load. So
yep.
I think it's an in-depth discussion that you have to define what is acceptable before you release it for production, and people take all kinds of liberties with its construction.
Right, we would certainly require, if the commission chose to move forward, would require them to show structural plans that would be reviewed by the building department as well as Clackamas Fire, just to make sure that they met the same, for Parklets, they met the same structural standards as they would if they were on a private property.
And again, in an attempt to simplify this, I would simply say suspend the issuance of new permits, allow the use of those structures constructed in their present configuration, and then review the whole program, both in terms of appearance and future safety considerations.
Do you have any information? I appreciate your report because I tried to do the link to Vancouver, and I saw all the pictures of the ones they have, but I couldn't find the standards that they had about heating. You said that they have covers and heat are allowed with limitations. Walls over 42 inches are not allowed, but I was looking in their standards and I couldn't pinpoint the cover item in their information. So do you have any information on what they do? I'm not saying we're gonna make a decision tonight, but I'm just trying to figure out what did they do? Because I know Vancouver's same concerns, you know, structural, is it gonna catch on fire? Is it gonna be a risk somebody runs into it?
I can recall my conversation with them, which was, we'll look at each one individually, which is similar to our position, which is
Right.
There could be configurations that won't work, and there's probably some that will.
Ms. Turway, I'm concerned with the proposal in the staff report that is essentially the option of, if we extend this extends the program an entire year to November 2021. I feel like there's no downtime in there for us to properly evaluate the program and make changes and work on it. I'm wondering, how much time do you think your department and staff need in order to put together a firm up, you know, all of these things that we're talking about tonight of roofs and electric and heat and all of these things. Do you have any idea on that?
Yes, we've done preliminary review or research, and we believe that we could have it ready by the next city commission meeting, provided that there's no template. If we put together a template that has to be followed, that would take more time, because we haven't done any research on that.
So you're saying that that we and city staff, you could put together a program that outlined how businesses within the defined areas could establish a roof for the wintertime, heat, electric, and they would have to step through all of the approval processes, fire department, all of that kind of stuff. And you could put all that together to bring back to the commission. And then at that point, it would be for us to consider timing or permanency, or do I have that right?
Yes, if you wanted to move forward with the program, we could turn it around quickly, as long as I have clear guidance on if you're just extending existing ones that are built as of today, or if you want to extend them all through the winter time. But yeah, the number of changes to the program that we actually have to make are not that many, but we would have to make sure they all go through a permitting process again so we can verify compliance.
So my concern of extending this for the existing ones versus keeping the program open as it stands now is there's no equity there. Like, if they jumped in early, then they're kind of grandfathered in and we're giving them permission to move forward, versus folks who may have held off just waiting to see what was going to happen with the pilot, and maybe they would get interest. I mean, maybe it's unlikely, but I'm a little hesitant to say, well, those 4 businesses, you know, jumped in within, 60 days, and therefore they're being awarded with something that none of the other businesses are now going to be excluded from until March.
Well, they should have jumped on.
Commissioner Smith?
I don't know if I agree with that, since it was never supposed to go through March.
Right.
You know, so I think I'm just trying to make a concession for the ones that, I think, if we actually wanted to be clean about it and say, yeah, we said remove them at the end of this date for the winter season, that's one thing, and it's fine to do that maybe with the parklets. I don't see that happening with the parking lots. I mean, I can't imagine asking, those businesses to remove the amount of work that they've put into, I can't imagine we even thought that was going to be an option, because I can't imagine us being able to do that. Right now, I just feel like I don't have enough information. I don't feel like the report has enough information. I don't feel like we're getting information from downtown, and really to have a discussion about, we don't even know if they were successful. Right? I mean, I don't know how many people use the parklets that exist. I don't know how many people use the parking lots that exist. I don't know any of that. And if we're going to take a downtime to discuss this and really launch this as a permanent thing, then the downtime is the winter months when we don't know what the health of this world's going to be. I mean, we're coming on a winter where, these questions about walls and roofs and COVID and stuff, I mean, if there's a downtime to figure this all out, it's the winter, and launch it, again in the spring, and really know that this is a permanent thing going forward. I would rather do that and do it right, and say that this is a commitment we're going to make as a city to do that. I just think there are so many hurdles here and unanswered questions yet that I don't want to do little steps at a time, because I think we'll regret it, and I think we want to have the businesses. If I had all the businesses here in downtown saying, oh, this was how it's been, and this is successful, and this is our plan, I might be feeling different tonight, but I have no idea.
I'd like to move that we continue the discussion to the next commission meeting and get some of that feedback that you're asking for. I'd like to hear from the people that have it and how successful it's been, if they can give us any information on, I've had this many customers out in my parking lot, or I've had this many customers in my parklet, and this has made a difference, or it hasn't made a difference. So that would be my motion.
My thoughts are a little different than that. When did we say the program was going to end initially? The first
November
issue?
30th. November 30th.
November 30th.
So we're not even talking about having to suspend the issuance of program. We can let the program end, but allow those who have constructed them and use them in their present form. And again, how many businesses have taken advantage of this when it was offered to them over this 75-day prime period when they would have generated the most income due to more tolerable weather? And then once we take this moment to establish what it is we want and what we feel is acceptable from a safety perspective and appearance perspective, and we send that out to those businesses and have them review it, how many of them want to engage in that conduct if we authorized it in November? Or they're going to say, I'll do that, assuming we even still need it in springtime. Maybe they would choose to do it. We could reactivate the program at any time. So those are my thoughts.
I'll make it a motion.
Is there a motion still on the table from Commissioner McGriff?
Yep, nobody seconded it, so I just.
Well, my question, do we need a motion, or is this just providing direction to staff?
It can be either.
I don't think you need one, but if there is on a one, we should make sure it's dealt.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you said if there is one what?
There is a motion on the table, and so either need a second or it dies for lack of a second.
Could you restate it, because I don't remember all of what you said.
My motion is to continue this to the next meeting and see if we can get some response from the local businesses, particularly those that have the parking lots and the parklet, and get some feedback from them. As you requested. And that would give staff direction on what because we still have time. It's November 30th is 1, 2, 3 meetings away. So it's just to take your advice, to get feedback and get people in here. I told Doka and several other members of the chamber that I had requested to put this on the next agenda, and
Not this one?
yes, this agenda. I told them that it was on the agenda.
Well, I mean, I think that's my problem, because no one's here. And so if they really, truly were advocating it for it, they'd be here telling us how successful it was.
I
And they're
told
just
them that I
not.
was going to get it on the next agenda. They all get the agendas.
Well,
So they could look and see. So I'm just asking for us to continue it to get the feedback that you are asking for.
I think if we continue it just to the next meeting, there's gonna be this assumption that we're gonna make a
No,
decision
I'm
at
not
this next
making that
meeting.
assumption.
I mean, as we get close to this deadline, it seems that that's a clean break. That's a clean break, and we never intended to fill that gap. We used the gap to do the planning we need to launch this big for the next season.
So you don't want any feedback?
I absolutely do, but that
Okay.
feedback's gonna come in those winter months that we have the gap.
I'm asking for it now.
I don't think the amount of answers or the amount of questions that I have are gonna be answered in time to have a decision to just before November to fill that gap.
I'm not asking that question. I'm not asking to extend it. I'm just saying my motion is to get these people to come in and tell us what they think about it. I'm not making an assumption that we would extend it. I'm not asking for the answers to the questions about heat, light, electricity. I'm not asking any of those questions. All I'm asking for is let's just continue this to the next meeting. They have an opportunity. We're giving them an opportunity to come in again and tell us, and then we can make a decision about what we want to do. And right now, we're leaning towards, we need more information. Part of that information is from them, but the other information is not from them. That's for us to make the decision about.
Okay,
So
so
what
there's
is
a
not
motion
clear
on the
about that?
table. There has not been a second. So the motion is going to die. Does anybody else have a different motion that they want to put forward? I will say, I'm still a little bit on the fence on this, and I'm leaning toward Commissioner Smith's proposal of doing what we set out to do, which was a pilot, and using the time to get feedback and dive deeper and really turn it into a program. Ask questions about the permitting process. We charge these folks $25 to do this pilot to help them for COVID. And COVID is changing, the environment's changing, there's a lot changing, and so I'm just afraid that the longer we keep doing all of this stuff, it's just gonna turn into permanent stuff and it's gonna be out of control, because we've allowed it to be in this pilot temporary program. So it sounds like,
Tony.
Tony Conkle.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm
whatever your name
drawing a
is.
blank on what to
What's
call
his
you.
face?
City Manager Conkle would like to have something to say.
So I guess I hear a couple of things. One, this commission was crystal clear as to the temporary nature of this. I am not as concerned about this becoming permanent unless the commission decides they want it to be permanent. You have sufficient tools. We were crystal clear that this is a 2-year pilot program. So I wouldn't be so worried about it by letting them do something, it's gonna be permanent for the next 20 years. I am confident that we have the tools to deal with that. Second, I kind of hear two things. We stick with what we said, we had a good game plan, it ends in November 30th, we regroup over the winter, and we decide what we wanna do on the back end when spring comes around. Second thing I kind of heard was, we've got these existing ones. Do we allow them in their existing state over the winter? Some equity issues there maybe, so those were, I think, the two themes that I heard so far.
Yeah, I was hoping Commissioner O'Donnell would make a motion about.
Well, I can make a motion based on Mr. Conkle's statement. I agree with consolidating items 2 and 3 you just stated. The program can come to its formal end, or we can allow those who have constructed these things to use them in their present configuration. And then we don't issue more permits. We re-examine it in terms of everything we want. We refine the program, and then we launch it a second time after we've got those things resolved. So I would simplify it. The motion would simply be just what you said, items 2 and 3. If you restated it, I would say that's my motion.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, discussion, Commissioner Smith?
I just want to clarify, the reason that I wouldn't have seconded Commissioner McGriff's motion is really, I feel like, I would rather spend the time to make this a permanent thing and do it right than to have discussion and reopening it for another trial period and another trial period. If we really think this is a good program, which I do, I want to have the feedback, I want to have the information of staff, and if we're going that direction, let's spend the winter to make it a permanent thing and do it right.
Well, that motion essentially gives us the opportunity to do that.
Right.
I have a clarifying question about the motion. Is the motion that those that are continuing forward through the winter, that they will come to an end before the next launch, and we're going to reconsider what the program looks like? I think it was March was when the next program. Is there an end? Like, is there a new end for this phase?
That's a fair question. If we allow it to be used in the current configuration, do we set an end date for that?
Well, I guess, one of my concerns, sir, is that you did bring up a good point. People are trying to evaluate the cost-benefit analysis and the return on their investment with regard to whether they should do this or not. And I think those who were committed to do it, such as Archbridge, who's, like I told you, he said, I was going to do it regardless. It cost a little more than he thought, but he wanted to do it. Other people hung back for whatever reason, and I'm not condemning them in any way, but there isn't, if they were hanging back for whatever reason, there is no incentive for them to do it now, because it's going to cost more to do something for the winter. So, I mean, I support what you said about letting them go through the winter, which is why I seconded the motion in their current configuration.
All right, I think we have a motion and a second.
I guess just if I could say a couple clarifying things. So I think Commissioner Lyle Smith, you know, you bring up, yeah, a good point, right? If we allow this over the winter and we have this significant change or a template or something and someone's non-compliant, you know, I think, you know, you still have the fallback of this is a pilot program that ends, right? Mm-hmm. And if you want to change and become part of the permanent program, if we decide to do that, right, you need to comply with the permanent program, or you're under the pre-existing one that is in place that, you know, expires in November of 21. I mean, that would probably be the cleanest way. You know, you have folks who've invested. We had identified a 2-year pilot program, no guarantee. There were zero guarantees by this commission that this would go on. And honestly, you know, we come up with a, you know, you have a lot of discretion here. You know, so I guess, and then the other thing I just want to clarify is, you know, we talk about stopping permits right now, right? We've got one that's already permitted, not built, right? So if someone comes in tomorrow and gets approved by the 30th, you know, are we comfortable with, if you have an approval by the 30th, you can construct? You know, because that was when this original one ended, right? So we would have to come back with a resolution or some type of a direction saying we're not, you know, as of tonight, we're not accepting any more applications, right? That's one option, right? You let this play out through November 30th. We've had 3 this whole time. So I don't want to complicate it anymore, but I mean, there are some logistics to this. We have one that's approved, right? To me, it's kind of like no changing the goalposts when I think of it from a land use standpoint, is they can go build tomorrow and they can build in a week and they can build in 30 days, unless we say something different. And then, you know, when I say in their existing configuration, you've brought up quite a bit about electricity, but Laura brings up a good point about, you know, how we have these propane roller tanks, right? And if someone came, if it exists, if Archbridge came to us and said, we want to roll these out on a nice day, and building looks at it and approves it, and fire looks at it, like, I'm just trying to see, you know, we have the safety review processes in place, or is it just, it is what it is, you know?
I'm comfortable with letting staff make that call, because
I don't know how much discretion you want here.
You're not going to approve something that isn't going to be safe.
Well, currently, is there any requirement, if I as a business owner who own a parklet decide I'm gonna put sources of heat out there, do I have to come up here and get clearance from the city? Or do I just wheel my propane tanks out there regardless of their condition? I put them wherever I want them, proximate to flammables, and I touch them off. What's the controlling criteria?
I believe you would need approval from the city. I know we would want to have approval. It's part of the application. If you said you didn't have heat and then you have heat, you're changing your proposal, so that's.
See, those kind of communications need to be made perfectly clear, so people don't, well, I had my parklets approved, all I did was wheel out some propane. That's how we get in trouble. You know, it's.
Or we just say.
All right, so we have, and we have a second. We're going to call a vote.
Yeah, we're not making the details.
Okay. What was the motion?
Okay, so.
You stated it and I used it.
I stated it.
Parklets are also a public works thing, so I actually don't permit them, so I'm communicating.
I was feeling a little bit abused there.
Are you laying low over there?
I'm laying low.
It's best to lay.
I appreciate everything, you know, I do, but for me, it's those that have an existing permit by November, which you set, those and only those could we get, I mean, the time issue is what I'm struggling with. Can we get permission through to March for them to stay there, just like what you're suggesting? And then in March again, that they were going to have to reapply anyway.
Right.
And then by then we've got these new standards that you will have a chance to discuss, get input from. And we need the time thing figured out, right? That's what we need tonight, isn't it? I mean, we need that time thing figured out, and then we can get what you want in terms of standards. We can adopt Vancouver's. Hell, I was in, Hood River. I think got some beautiful parklets there, none of which I noticed were covered. That's a big jump. I'm not quite sure how we get there either.
They got a wind load issue there.
But, well, we have windy times too. So
Not like there.
we really need the time thing. And I think those that have an existing permit, if we could get approval to issue them an extension through to March, that lets them continue to use it. And then in March, they have to get a new permit, just like a new one that wants to come in, that didn't have a permit by
Okay with that?
November.
Are you okay with
Well,
amending that?
I think we consolidate everything that's been said. We consolidate to use it in its existing form. We allow application through the original date of November 30th. And if there, and we, the program comes to its end, when is it? March?
Well, the original pilot program started again in March and then ended November 30th of 2021. But they were gonna have to get a permit
March 15th,
on March
2021.
15th of 2021.
Yeah, I've got your
So I think
memo.
we could, as John says, maybe we extend these through March 14th, the existing, or the ones that get a permit by November 30th, we'll extend them through March 14th.
Of 2021.
And then we will have this discussion over the winter of
Right.
what happens on March 15th of 2021.
In the meantime, that those that already exist are allowed to be used in the current configuration or approved configuration.
Right.
Correct.
I'll agree to the amendment.
That's how it reads. Do we have it in the form of a motion that understandable by everyone?
And just one clarification, it's not those that exist, it's those that were approved by November 30th.
That would be
Right.
fine.
Okay. So we're gonna, are we gonna bring back could we just bring back a resolution? That can be adopted at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Then we can
Clean it
word
up.
all this. I think we understand what the commission would like. We'll go back, we'll write something clean, and bring that back on the 21st.
We still have a motion and a second on the table.
Yeah.
Do you mind withdrawing,
Could they-
or did
I
you
will
want?
withdraw the second and.
You made the motion, I was.
Excuse me, I will withdraw the motion and follow the advice of Mr. Conkle to construct a resolution that be brought back for review.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Good.
And thank you.
I haven't said I've withdrawn my second.
Well, there's no motion to second because I withdrew it.
Well, the seconder has to withdraw, and then the main motion has to be withdrawn. So in deference to
Okay.
you, I will withdraw my second.
You are too good to me.
All right, so I think that was all general business. Can we move on to the consent agenda, item A8?
I move the consent agenda.
Second?
Call the roll.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commission President Rachel Lyle Smith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Riggs. Now we're on the communications. Mr. Conkle?
Yeah, that's nice.
I do not have any updates for tonight, thank you.
Okay, commissioners? I'll go to Commissioner Smith.
Was so happy about the last night's events at the police department, Robert Libke's facility, and was such a great night, and I'm so glad to see that building come to fruition. So I want to congratulate Jim Van and the police department and everyone involved in that project. So exciting to see that done.
Commissioner McGriff?
Yes, I was looking for my memo, which now is muddled in my papers, but I wanted to report that Citizens Bank in the Hilltop is going to have a marble toss on the 21st of October, and it's a fundraiser for several nonprofits in Oregon City, including our chamber and I believe the Optimus Club. And basically what you do is you go through the drive-through, as I recall, I'm trying to find the memo, and basically you get a few marbles and you drop them in to whichever organization you want to support. And I believe that's 10 to 2. But since our next meeting is close to that, I'll make sure the information gets to our recorder and she could send it out to you. So I don't want to brag, but one of the boxes that they're going to have there was made by somebody that you know quite well.
Wow.
So I'm hoping you'll put all your marbles in that one.
One does not want to be accused of losing their marbles.
No, no one will be accused. Well, you want to lose your marbles into the box.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I have nothing further, thank you.
Yeah, I would concur with Commissioner Smith. I think we were all very happy to be at the police department ribbon cutting last night. It was a wonderful event, and I hope that the community gets a chance to watch the recording and look at the pictures that were posted. But I don't have anything other than that. So with that,
I was going to ask a question. I know Chief Band is, oh, maybe he's on. Is there going to be any opportunity for the public to at least view the public areas in some way? Because I know people said, well, I couldn't go to the thing. I saw it on TV, but I'd sure like to see it. So I don't know. There he is.
Say his name 3 times, he appears.
Is that like a genie?
He's in his new office.
So to your question, Commissioner McGriff, yes, we are open for business. We've got people who've been stopping by. So I don't really, COVID is such a weird thing. And so there's no, I guess, I don't really want to commit to anything at this point just because we're trying to do our best to commit to our restricted by COVID and the people who are doing regular business. But certainly if people duck in and take a poke around, it is a public building and they can certainly see the commission chambers.
Are you in your new space?
I am.
Wow.
We're all going to go, ooh.
mm-hmm.
I'm taking notes on how well the HVAC system works.
And your prognosis so far? What's your prognosis so far?
The HVAC isn't working all that well, I believe.
Oh, okay, the HVAC is not working. The HVAC isn't working all that well.
It's a new building, and they're still working out a number of bugs that are kind of expected with the new building.
Oh. Yes.
Good summary.
Thank you, Chief.
I think there's a myriad of things to work out to get it to be a smooth running machine, smooth running building. So, all right. So we're going to move to executive session right after the. How about a 5-minute break for folks who will come back at 9:20, if that's okay with you, Katie?
Mr. O'Donnell's
yes, that sounds great.
He's going to put the gavel down. Very good.
Adjourned.